Hey everybody, welcome to another video. And this one we're going to be talking about the Baldwin 45 conversion. And here's a neat little video about it. Hope you enjoy it. Check it out. So it turns out after a little investigation, they are the somewhat sought after 45 series, the Baldwin 45. So on the back there's a tag here and it says, we'll go in on it. Let me get my eyeballs on. All right. Amplifier model PC, tone chamber system S, electrical output 40 watts. Draw 200 watts. So it takes 200 watts for these things to spit out 45 with 4 power tubes. So let's take a look at this thing. What are we checking out here? I got 2 of them that are the same. So here's the gut shot of one and here's the top side of the other. Dual rectified, 4 power amp tubes, single 6SL7, which is a high mu dual triode octal. And over here we have some plugs, accessory plugs, and on the back there's an input plug. And massive choke. So first thing you think of when you see this is maybe this was a stereo amp and that, you know, the organs came as stereo. You could have a stereo setting for them in later models, but no, this was a massive choke. So what I'm thinking is if this thing was only spitting out 45 watts and it's got this big of a choke on it, my assumption is that, you know, on the organ, when you hit those low notes and it went boom, like the oboe setting on an organ, you wanted it to sound big and boomy. But without that choke, you end up getting, you know, it would distort. You'd get a big Geezer Butler bass tone when you hit that. So that stiff choke is really going to hold that together with that 45 watt output using 4 power tubes. So that's massive headroom. So that's the great thing about this amp. Apparently, I looked it up a little bit. People love to turn these into builds. Check out the chassis. The chassis is ready to go. As far as an amp, you know, as a head, it looks totally doable. I can convert this thing, and we're going to do it. I mean, we're going to take one of these and build a 50 or 100 watt head, probably 100 watt. But you can see in here we got some air coils. What do you call it? Air core resistor coils. And sometimes you see these in older amps. And check out the old resistors. These are definitely reusable. I take these out and test them and reuse them because they're great. If they're still good, they're still good. So, excuse me. You can see wiring still nice, soft, supple. It's not all stiff. Big old hair in there. Ugh. But the wiring still is really good. It's unlike some of these other amps. The wiring can get really stiff and brittle. Now this amp looks like it's been through something. If you can tell, it's been through a fire or something. It's seen something. So I don't know if you can see that from right there, but we're gonna test it out and see, you know, see how she does. And then, you know, since we got 2 of them, this one seems to be a lot cleaner. The guts on this one are way nicer. Oh, and it's got that smell I love. Vintage wiring. So yeah, I was going through these, checking them out, seeing if there was any differences. Not a big difference. This one had an extra hole drilled out in it and a plug put in it. So I'm not sure what the idea there was after the fact, if it was done factory, or they both seem to be wired exactly with the same style, unaltered wiring. And I'm looking forward to pulling this apart and using it and having a great time like I do with these. And I was so excited that the chassis seems to be ready to be mounted in a case already. And big steel heavy case. And yeah, so she is. Oh, they're freaking heavy. All right, getting in this thing a little bit. I did notice too, first thing I check on some of these when you get these organ chassis is that sometimes you're limited on your output selectors. So on this particular one, it looks like we have 2 wires to choose from plus our ground. So I'm hoping that's a 4 and an 8 or an 8 and a 16 to choose from in the end. And you can see this one's got a little bit of it, obviously a little negative feedback coming off here. Another thing, you know, when you get these, you always got to look for the telltale signs on the transformers of it having gone through some state of shock or some type of trauma. The transformer ended up heating up and losing its juice. So sometimes, you know, you'll find little telltale signs where you'll see warpage or you'll see a fluid coming out at one point, or it'll just be, everything will be charred and burnt. And surprisingly, for the top of this thing and how burnt the top of it was, the inside's still pretty clean, which leads me to believe that maybe this was involved in something like a fire, or just was neglected outside, or maybe it was oversprayed. It's definitely got a layer of something on it. Like, it definitely looks like it was in, it's got some kind of like, ouch, some kind of heat damage. Oh God, these are freaking heavy. Ah! I don't know if you can see that bubbling on the side of the chassis, but it's got some kind of heat damage on it. My God, these are freaking heavy. Not only were they freaking power hogs, whew, I'm sure in an organ, man, that was probably a big part of the weight of the organ. Whew, man, these things are luggy. All right, so, but you can trace back here what we're looking at coming out of the transformer. We got some center taps and maybe a, I don't know if this is some type of a bias tap, or we can trace the heaters and the filament and HT lines for the dual rectification, and then it drives these two, goes into these 2 resistors. And being that we've only got one preamp too, I'm sure it's acting as a, you know, 1 stage pre, the other stage is a phase inverter, and then off to the races in the power section. And these green caps are different. They're called mica mold Tropicaps. So that's interesting. I've got a huge box of some really old, sick vintage capacitors. I don't know if they work anymore, and I don't have any way to test them other than by a multimeter, which it'll tell you the capacitance, but it won't tell you if the capacitor is good or bad or not. So, just enjoying the smell. Oh man, I love the smell of these things. This right here is the gain pot. On the other amp, it's different. It's covered with something. And I was looking at these filter caps too. These are 4 microfarad 600 volt caps, which makes perfect sense. These massive transformers start off with some serious voltage, and you got to drop them down. That's why he's got these major resistors in here. They're dropping some serious voltage in here to get what they want to get out of this amp. You know, Baldwin knew what they were doing, and they knew how to get that clean power. And so I'm not sure that people would convert these exactly as they are to a guitar amp. Everybody kept saying they like to work on them and turn them into a guitar amp or something like that. And I don't know, maybe they sound good if you were just to convert the input to a guitar input and just take its design spectrum and use that for guitar. But I mean, not me. I build metal amps mostly, or I like to drive amps or build amps that have a little drive to them. And so that's what we're going to do with this. We're not going to use any of this topology. We'll come up with our own, and by God, we'll get it right. Okay, and now the other amps that I got, you know, I'm just, sorry for I'm trying to sit down here. I'm just not sure where these are going to go. The guy threw them in for what I paid for the other 2. And who knows if this is a doable thing. I mean, I never trust these kind of paper bobbin output transformers. on these rebuilds and stuff. I always prefer the output transformers that are covered. Just flop that over, don't mind me. And here's some of the other ones. And this one's missing its output transformer. But see, this one's got the paper thing on there. And it's not that they're not good or they wouldn't be good, but to me, I always look at them a little bit suspect. So, in this one, it's got a PCB. Don't know what year this came from, but it's always cool to see PCB stuff in early tube amps. And you can see that's pretty crusty, man. It definitely, maybe this amp went through something. Definitely stereo, low wattage, but there's that. And this was the one that's kind of, out of all of these old ones, this was the one that kind of caught my eye as being something worthy of maybe taking somewhere and building something small out of it. Let's take a look at its guts. Oops. I can keep them. If I can keep them looking all right. Break it up. No signs of scariness. But never was a big fan of these weird flat style sockets like that. It just seems to me like the tube is just so prone to getting smacked around like that. There's just nothing holding the tube in, you know, besides just the pins, man. The strength of the distance of the pins, because it's not the pins themselves, it's kind of the way they're spaced, because you got to get them spaced out far enough so they sit tightly in the holes, because if they're not spaced out, they just, you know, what I call sloppy sockets. They kind of just slop around, so the pins have to be, you know, pushed out a little bit. And worked with this one's got the bear trap on it, which is good. But so this one seemed to be something we were going to try and, does it say Vescor? Neighbor's dogs. Anyways, and there's one more down there too in the hall. But got shot of this one since it flipped over. But oh, those dogs never shut up, man. If a guy would just take him for a walk once in a while, none of my business. So there you have it. And you can see on this one, so I was trying to figure out like maybe what the gain was doing. And basically all I'm thinking, just kind of looking at the way it's wired up in here, I think basically it was allowing, because you can see this big fat wire right here was the input, goes to the input plug. As it comes out, it branches off into a couple ways, but one of them goes to this pot. So I just basically think the gain was just a volume allowance into the system itself. So you could set that if you wanted to tone it back, or you just wanted to crank it up all the way and run it at full. It was attenuating the input signal. So as far as I can tell, I mean, it said gain, but maybe it was doing more than that. But I can see that it's not really doing much. Well, you can see here what's going on. It doesn't look anything special in the way of gain. So there it is. And you can see this pot was different than the one from the other one. And it also had different caps. 0.1s. Also, too, if you notice, I thought this thing was looking like it's ready to go. I mean, these are holding the resistors in from the inside. I think I'm going to get rid of those. So we've got the pre holes ready for knobs. So I can space more out and do another one right here, another one right here, another one right here. And this is perfect because the input can be over here, or this one could be the input right where the output transformer is. It's kind of how I like to do things. And so over here would be power next to the power transformer. Switch it on over here, and then we'd plug in over here, and I'd probably run or plug it in here. We do like gain, master, bass, mid, treble, and then anything else I could just put in the back too. And as far as these accessory plugs go, these are perfect spots to run can caps later on. So maybe in this thing I'll put a couple can caps here, and maybe use these two right here to run the preamp section. I can run 3 tubes right here, and I'll have to get one of those little converters, or just figure out some way to maybe even utilize this 6S in, what does it say? 6S7, sorry, as some sort of an integration into the amp. I mean, we could check out the phase inverter and see what this thing does. And I'm always for the long tail pair because it adds a little bit of crunch, or it adds to the crunch, I should say. I mean, in the end, do I want to keep it dual rectified? That's a tough one. I mean, I've always thought about what it would be cool to do a switchable setup for. You could do solid state rectification versus tube rectification, but it gets a little complicated past that point to deal with your voltages in 2 separate ways. So to me, I mean, it's not that you couldn't be done, but I just think one or the other might be better for where I'm at with my skill set. So I'm still trying to decide, maybe do one, if both of these work, maybe do one as a dual rectified tube and do one as a solid state, and see what we get out of it if they're both working. I have my doubts about the one that seems to have gone through something, but you never know. A lot of them seem to have gone through something and they work perfectly. So I've had nothing but great luck picking these old amps up. Now, we're talking frequency bandwidth on a transformer, or a set of transformers. Now, on a Baldwin keyboard, please keep in mind that you're dealing with a lot wider spectrum range for an organ, with all these sounds and all these different ranges and things going on, 88 keys maybe, and it's not notched for guitar. So when you run a guitar setup through these super, wide band kind of setups like this, like they would be for this, you're not going to get all of that new guitar thump that you can get out of custom wound transformers that are spec'd for guitar frequency, which the new ones are. And so with these older ones, you're going to get a little bit of maybe sometimes you'll get some voltage sags, and you can work hard to try and alleviate that. But the truth is these are older transformers, and they're more full range, and they were built for a whole bunch of range of uses, not just for guitar. So when I take these out and I use them for guitar, I'm trying to encapsulate something it's kind of trying to step out of its boundaries a little bit. And so, some of that has to be reeled in upon my design, I think. And that's something I look at and listen to. And, so that's the fun part about doing these old amps, is you get to, check out the frequency range and how big and boomy it gets, or how squashed it sounds, or whatever, until you get it right. And then you're happy. Okay. Another thing I want to go over is, in designing one of these old guys to do something a little more modern, where you put this massive 10 Henry choke kind of makes a difference. If we were to leave it where it's at, just off the rectifier, it would keep a lot of that low end, that big stoner rock boomy head sound. But if we take it and we slip this choke between the screens and the plates, it will stiffen it up. It will stiffen those screens up and give this amp more of a traditional feel. So because this 10 Henry choke is designed for big continuous current, putting it between the plates and screens will make the screens supply incredibly stiff and stable. Under heavy high gain palm muting, your screen voltage will barely sag at all. So it'll barely budge. So this preserves maximum power amp headroom and preventing the power amp section from compressing and too early, and really it keeps your modern high gain chugs razor sharp and barky, you know what I mean? That it just gives it that that you want. So that's just one thing I wanted to kind of throw in about using chokes. And you know, some of the amps I've done, I didn't use chokes, and they come out pretty saggy sounding in my opinion. So I really like the sound of using a choke. It really gives the amp, tightens the fist up quite a bit. It goes from to that. So, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This concludes this video about the Baldwin 45 amp. And I'll keep you posted on what we're doing, because I'm working on a lot of things at once right now, and I'm trying to get this Grasshopper amp done. So, the Mantis. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.